Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. We bring you expert advice on how to make and manage your money right, what you need to keep in mind when it comes to hiring right, innovation strategy, in fact, anything and everything related to the life of an entrepreneur. We cover it right here on the show. My name is Sanjay Aggarwal. Tonight, we are continuing our countdown to the budget, bringing you the biggest expert voices on what is going to impact the life of the entrepreneur the most in the upcoming budget. Let me welcome in our guests and experts tonight. First up, we have Sanjay Aggarwal, President at PHDCCI, Animesh Saxena, President at FISME, and Amit Singhania, Partner at Shardul Amarchand Magatas. He's also member at Assocham. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. Sanjay, maybe I can come to you first and ask you, if there's one thing that you want to see from the budget by way of commentary, what would it be?
You see, I think the headline for small businesses, in fact for every stakeholder in the Indian economy, would be revival of demand. This is what we are suffering from. Small businesses are especially suffering from this revival of, this because of this lack of demand. And we really need to work on this thing to revive the demand to the maximum extent possible. We have, from the PhD chamber, we have given many suggestions on this. One major suggestion, of course, to revive the demand is that we need to have a major push into spending on infrastructure projects. Ultimately, when the private sector is shy of investing and the government departments, also had no option but to cut their expenditure in the first 9 months of this financial year have been gone. We have had a reduction of 4 lakh crores on the busted expenditure of various ministries and PSUs. Now, that was caused because of the reduction in, tax collections and all. But what we now need to do is to, have a demand push in the economy. We have to build on the infrastructure. Sure. There is this plan called National Infrastructure Plan for 111 lakh crores, which needs to be spent ASAP, front-loaded, and for which we need a mega DFI to immediately be formed and fund these projects.
Animesh, Amit, the same question that I want to ask you. What's the headline you are watching for from the budget?
I'll prefer collateral-free access to institutional finance for MSMEs. What the government did in Atmanirbhar Bharat package, they announced 3 lakh crore collateral-free, but that was for existing borrowers. And if you see the number of beneficiaries, they were hardly 2 lakhs. And the total MSME in India, registered MSMEs, are more than 6 crores. So it means this scheme was not meant or probably not suitable for that. So I'll expect if one line, a collateral-free institutional finance access to MSMEs.
So my take is the role of the government is to provide an uninterrupted, non-interfering, hassle-free framework. And in the last 9 months, there has been policy announcement. And I will just highlight one policy announcement is the slashing of the corporate tax rate from headline rate from 30% to 25% for the company. And this has been the blockbuster announcement by the government, has benefit almost all the companies. So why not to extend it to the sole proprietorship and to the partnerships as well? Why to exclude them? Why to exclude them to not to take this kind of a benefit? This is definitely going to help them. This is going to generate additional surplus in their hand, which they can further invest into the business and try to create surplus supply into the system.
In fact, a progressive tax structure is what one of India's largest bankers, V. Vaidyanathan of IDFC First Bank, has given us to understand is on top of his wish list. But I want to talk about what, in your opinion, is really going to boost consumption and consumer sentiment. Because, one of the easiest things to do is for the government to increase public expenditure and public spending really that, at least there's no indication of that just yet. So what, in your opinion, is it going to take? Open to the three of you. Animesh, maybe I can come to you first.
Yes. You see, the government in our country is the biggest business entity. The government and PSUs together. what we have been hearing and seeing, the government has some, revenue constraint. So government has reduced its spending. This will be extremely, difficult for revival of the demand. So we request the government should not reduce its spending. Government should in fact increase the spending. And second part, the infrastructure development. Government should not slow it down, because it spurs the demand, and it will have a cascading effect. The government starts spending more, government spends on infrastructure, entire private sector gets benefited from them, from MSME to the large corporate, because they're all being associated with the government, either supplying or getting a part of that business. So the government should not slow down its spending to spur the demand. That is our take on that.
Sanjay, are you confident that 2021, the new year really, is going to see a strong pickup? Because the indications are that we have seen some bit of revival. The government on its part, of course, announcing several schemes to try and kickstart the economy, whether it's Atmanirbhar Bharat or the PLI scheme. Do you think that confidence, growth is going to really come back into the economy?
I totally agree with you that the economic signs are, going towards the positive side. We in the PhD chamber, we have launched this Economic and Business Momentum Index, from which we had even last month predicted that the Q3 figures should be a positive of up to 2%, and Q4 figures should be a positive of up to 4%.
Yeah.
Overall, end of the year, we still predict something like minus 7.9. But the next year, we are seeing for 21-22, we are looking at a growth of at least 7.5%. All these factors are very good, but at the same time, we have to understand that the pain that has been inflicted on the economy is huge. The need for demand, as my co-panelists, I think it's Amit have mentioned, is very important to resuscitate the demand on a ASAP basis. And for that, the government has to spend, which I totally agree with Parimesh. What we need to do is we do not bother about the fiscal deficit, which is what many economists have now, been saying for the last few months. And even if we are very much worried about the economic, fiscal deficit, then the other way is to have, there is so much spare money lapping around in the international money markets simply because of the incentives and stimulus given by various Western economies. We can tap some part of that funding into the Indian economy by having sovereign bonds for funding of infrastructure projects. If the government, those projects are already planned, they are already on the design table, you can kickstart them immediately because they have already been announced. They were announced on 31st December 2019. So you have what you need to do. You only need the money to do it. Get the money ASAP, start spending it, and that will revive and kickstart the demand. One more thing that I would like to say is to cap the personal income tax at maximum of 25%, which and the same would apply again to, as Amit also said, for the MSMEs as proprietorships or LLPs or partnerships, same way as companies. Once you tax everything at a max of 25%, you can easily expect your tax to GDP ratio to go up from the dismal 17% that we have to at least the emerging market average of 22%. That is going to give a big boost to the economy.
Amit, I want to talk to you about the services space, something that you briefly referred to in your previous answer. Most economists and experts talking to us saying that they're seeing a K-shaped recovery, with the bottom of the K really being the services industry. That's the kind of growth, not as much as the manufacturing industry. So my question to you is, for an entrepreneur who is in the services space, what is your advice? What should they be doing? What should they be watching out for growth if they want to really try and bring growth back into the economy?
Look, if you see in the last 2 decades, service sector has taken a prominent place in terms of our GDP numbers. Today, service sector occupies 5% of the GDP number, and it has been growing progressively. Now, if you see in terms of the government announcement, in the past 9 months, the government has done quite a lot for the manufacturing space. They have slashed the manufacturing tax, headline corporate tax rate to 15%, which is quite a welcome announcement. However, they have excluded service sector from this particular 15% bracket. When our service sector is flourishing, so why not to encourage it more? in the service sector has been the strength of our economy. Why not to encourage the service sector? Why not to extend this 15% benefit also to the service sector? This will motivate the foreign company to set up their data centers, software development centers to India, and it will also increase the FDI flow into the market. This will not only have the employment generation aspect, but also the FDI flows. And when a particular sector is already flowing, why not to capitalize upon this particular opportunity? So my take is, if you extend this 15% tax rate to the service sector, to the software development industry, this is going to see a rise in the long run.
We have to slip on a short break. On that note, we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here in Leaders of Tomorrow. And tonight, we are counting down to the budget here on Leaders of Tomorrow. We were talking about spends on public expenditure. One of the things, of course, is infrastructure. What would you like to see as far as public spend and government spend on infrastructure is concerned, and the benefit, perhaps that could come out of that for small businesses?
The government starts spending on the infrastructure projects, and there are bidders from the private sector to execute that for the government. Government has reserved a certain, 25% of that to the MSME sector. But what is happening, which we have noticed, that the actual benefit is not coming to MSMEs, because there are certain loopholes in that. What is an MSME? And what is happening, large corporates or the large construction companies or the infrastructure development companies, they are, somehow entering into this, taking this route. So we have requested the government that make it first 100% Indian company. Like what is happening, most of the foreign companies, they have a JV here, and that JV bids for that. And that, so we, and a real MSME, we get left out from that because they have a bigger clout and all these things. So what we have been requesting, that it should be an Indian company with the majority ownership, Indian ownership. And the definition, when the definition has been changed, it should be strictly followed, like that 25% share should come to certain size of the companies. Then the MSME gets benefited. What is happening? If you see, the MSME contributes today 40% of our GDP, and it is the largest employer also. And most of the, like India's youth population, majority of them is still unskilled, and it is MSME who employs them. Because the big corporations, they are mostly in the automation, so they require very skilled manpower. With the current demography, MSME is the only way out where all these people, the youth population, can be employed meaningfully. So government has to focus on that and make sure this sector gets its due. I mean, its share should not be taken away by the bigger companies.
You made a brief reference to the liquidity situation. So if we can really talk about what more do you think that the government should be doing? Because, we've seen on one hand collateral-free loans, announcements around that. We've seen announcements as far as, the CGT, MSC, etc. concerned. But on the other hand, a lot of the MSME small businesses saying the benefit not really accruing to them. So what more do you think needs to be done? How can that mismatch be fixed?
ECLGS is the typical example. 3 lakh crores of emergency credit loan guarantee scheme was announced. Till date, the dispersal is something in the region of 1.6 lakh crores. As Animeshji pointed out, that even that is for a very small number of the 6 crore MSMEs that exist in the ecosystem. So we need to have a very, very strong push towards a disbursal of what is already granted. If we can't even disburse that 3 lakh crores, 9 months, it's 9 months now, and we are ending up at just 1.6 lakh crores. So that is the biggest worry, and on top of that, then we need larger guarantee schemes with, as Ramesh said, we have to talk about those who are not existing borrowers. We have to allow and open new borrowers with those credit guarantees. There is a total bias now towards retail loans. Even if, somebody is willing, a bank is willing to give a 1.5 crore, 2 crore housing loan easily. But if an entrepreneur needs 1 crore or 2 crore for his enterprise, for his trading, for his business, for his services, the banks are very, very hesitant. And that is where I think the whole mindset needs to be changed. But then at the same time, the government also has to step in with some very very stiff rules on that front.
Animesh, given that you have your ear so close to the ground, what in your opinion should the government be doing when it comes to easing up the liquidity situation?
From the budget, we have, I think in the first opening remark, I said the government has to come up with a scheme which is a collateral-free institutional finance access.
Yeah.
What is happening right now? The biggest issue is the MSME lack the access of the institutional finance because of the last mile connectivity of the public sector banks or even the scheduled private bank is very, very poor. Most of the MSMEs were dependent on either NBFCs or the private lenders. NBFC and private lender, as you know, the kind of interest they charge, it is completely unviable. The MSMEs were simply servicing that loan, that's all. And NBFC were still better. The loan rates were higher than the scheduled bank. Government should increase the last mile connectivity of the banks. And second thing, the mindset, which Sanjay ji has also said. What is happening? A branch manager of a bank,
Sure.
He's there in a branch for 2 or 3 years. He wants a clean book. He doesn't want any, defaults. Because there's a witch hunting in the bank. No officer today in the bank wants a bad loan in his record so that he can be, penalized or harassed for that. That mindset has to be changed. Bank management has to tell these people that you use your prerogative and increase your, the connectivity with the bank. What is happening? NBFCs, why had they had a better connectivity? Because they were permanent employees there in the base. Banks people keep on changing. So this is the ground reality I'm telling you. The NBFC knew that MSME and he knew that the money is safe, he can recover the money. The bank person is there for a year or so and he is not sure. So something like that, we had suggested a proposal to the government. Why can't banks can tie up with NBFCs, some sort of a lead bank, like bank is the funder and NBFC is the distributor. So the bank can also keep an eye. Bank can keep an eye on the NBFC if they are not misusing that money or blowing it away and take the advantage of NBFC's last mile connectivity. So if this can be done in the budget, this will be a game changer. If the MSME can get a money in 8 to 10%, that will be will make a huge difference in their life.
Mr. Aggarwal, I want to talk to you about a recent report that you've put out in the chambers on the export markets and why it's very crucial for small businesses. Very briefly, could you talk to our small businesses on that? Give us your view on that.
I think it would not be strictly related to budget, but on the export front, what I would say is that we have to go ahead and sign FTAs with our major customers, which are the economies like USA, Europe, UK. These are the countries with which we need to enter into FTAs ASAP, and this is where the maximum exposure of MSMEs is also there. Their handicrafts, their textiles, everything which MSMEs typically manufacture is mostly exported to these Western economies. And this is where we have been lacking. So I think what I would expect is for the export growth to happen, we must enter into FTAs with our friends in the US, in Europe, in UK, Australia and so on. That would be for me, the biggest thing that we should be doing. The expenditure on the economy, the demand creation is very important. Credit to MSMEs is the most important priority. I think demand and credit. If you create demand and you are able to disburse the credit to the small entrepreneur, I think we have got it made.
Amit, I'll let you have the last word, but I do want to talk about what more the government needs to do when we're talking serious labor reforms. Some announcements have been made as far as hiring and firing being made easier for a certain section of companies. What more do you want to see?
In the last 7-8 years, there has been so many policy announcements. And to my mind, we do policy announcement. The taste of the pudding lies in eating it. Similarly, instead of making a policy announcement, the focus should be more on its implementation, seamless implementation, so that the benefit which has already been announced flow to the last common man. Just like the credit, there have been so many announcements on the collateral-free loans, but still we can see that those collateral-free loans are not reaching to the right person. So just the policy implementation will hit the stroke. Just tick the fundamental box and the economy will definitely flourish. When the problem is big, complex, don't do too many things, just do the fundamental thing. Just address the fundamental and we will have a competitive edge in the group.
Gentlemen, completely out of time on this episode. Thank you very much for counting down to the budget here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Out of time on this episode. If you have any feedback for us, our contact details are on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.